Hello everyone, a warm welcome to join the C-Suite Talks, elevate your leadership journey today. This is Vijay, I am your host. Today we are joined by Mr. Amer Nizamuddin, Fractional COO and Startup Advisor at Pococare, also the founder of Building WisdomQuant. Our guest has a wealth of experience in the industry. We are excited to learn from him. Today's theme is delivering the future, global operations and technology insights. Let's start our discussion. Hello, Amar. Welcome to our podcasting.
Hi, Vijay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me on the podcast. Very happy to be here.
Thank you so much for accepting and joining us today.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Could you please share about your career journey?
Okay, that's an interesting point to get started from. So I've seen Manjunath also joining. And so nice to see you, Manjunath, on this. Thanks for making time. Right. So my career journey has spanned about 24 years for now. Started my career as a business analyst with a consulting company right out of college. Post MBA, joined a startup called Office Tiger. So there I faced, I wore several hats, right? Started with workflow and ERP designing, where I was the functional architect, right? And then moving on to operations, pure play business operations, while, keeping the MIS division under me. I was into banking, investment banking, and then legal, and then I set up the pre-media services, right? So Office Tiger was eventually acquired by a company called R.R. Donnelley, which was a Fortune, I think, 200 company at that point. It was a very sweet deal because, growing up with a startup, you learn a lot of things, right? You make a lot of mistakes. You're trying to be on your toes all the time. But it was a wonderful journey. And the sweet icing was that we got bought out for $250 million all cash, right? So that was a sweet spot there. Now with R.R. Donnelley, R.R. Donnelley subsequently acquired another company called Astron, which was a England-based company. Right, I continue to head banking operations while keeping legal and technology with me. Right, post R.R. Donnelley and Office Tiger, I worked with another startup, which was the first LPO in the world, a company called Pangea 3. My job there was to, in addition to business strategy and setting up a center of excellence, was to scale the business to take it up for acquisition. Right, so I think that also went fairly well. We got acquired by Thomson Reuters in 2010, and I continued to head the operations for the business. Now, Thomson Reuters Legal was subsequently acquired by Ernst & Young, so it is called Ernst & Young as of now. After that, there was a domain shift. I moved into e-commerce with Ixula, another startup slash MSME. Where I was responsible for scaling their operations and turning around profitability, right? Eventually, once that was stabilized and we were exceeding our goals and targets, I also took up the technology business with the CEO and the CTO reporting into me, right? To basically scale that business as well. Okay. Now what I'm working on is a very interesting startup. It's called WisdomQuant. Now, WisdomQuant will hopefully provide the next level of skill-based learning content, right? Which will help people get job ready. And there is a whole, research that has gone into it. In addition to that, I work with several startups, right, at MSMEs, medium-sized enterprises, helping them scale and helping them basically problem solve and get back to track, right? So, over the last 24 years, I've had the privilege of working at the intersection of technology, operations, and strategy, right? And working with diverse teams, heading multi-located teams, multi-country related teams. Right. So, Vijay, in short, that's been my journey so long.
Thank you, Amar. So I understand that you mostly worked with startup and solve their problems, and you have covered legal and technology, and now skill-based. So many domains you have more on. Of course, e-commerce as well. So let's start our discussions. So the question is all about the journey only, right? So how do you envision the future of global operations, particularly in sector like e-commerce, digital media, and legal services, given the rapid advancements of in technology?
This is a great question, Vijay. So I think the writing is pretty much on the wall, right? The future of global operations is bound to be more interconnected, right? It has to be agile. It has to improve on customer centricity, right? So let's explain that. So you mentioned three streams, right? So I'll pick up e-commerce and let's look at some examples for e-commerce related here. I think we can foresee some real-time inventory management. I think today the glitch that e-commerce companies global environment is a sudden, right? So with technology advancements that we are seeing long pre-COVID, now post-COVID, there's a stark difference. So I would see more real-time inventory management, fast mechanisms, and heightened personalization, right? So if you look at it, when we see technology, I see AI as a facet of technology. It's another representation, right, of technology, the way that we see it. Now with AI and with advancements in the way that we look at data with predictive analytics, right, things are bound to change. So I would foresee a lot of improvements which will lead to customer satisfaction on the e-commerce side, right? Specifically on the supply chain and the customization and even the content quality. You know, for example, when you log into say an Amazon.com and you search for an iPhone X, right? You get some images, you get some title, headers, etc. Now most of these are human written, right? These are things that I am pretty sure that technology and AI, especially generative AI, is going to be taking over. And with the data layers that lie behind the customer interactions, we will see a lot of personalization happening there. Now, if we take this a step further, that is where digital media is going to come in, right? So I think digital media is likely to further embrace augmented and virtual reality, right? So rather than staring at a phone screen or a computer screen and placing your orders, you could be immersed into virtual reality and actually take a pick of what you're really buying, right? So while some advancements have happened there, I would see a lot more advancements happening in that space in the next 5 years, right? And I think legal was the third one that you spoke about, right, Vijay?
Yes, legal also I asked.
Right. So, see, when we look at legal, right, and it's a very interesting thing because now with the number of companies that are sprawling up every day, startups are coming up, etc. And with my interactions with CEOs and with founders and with entrepreneurs, I see that sometimes legal is not something that is given a lot of weightage, right? And it's more towards product development and pushing things out to the customer, right? But for effective risk management, I think legal knowledge and legal awareness, specifically when it comes to contracts, etc., is a prerequisite today. I would not say that it is a good to have skill. It's pretty much a necessity, right? Now with that, if I break down legal, so you would have things like e-discovery, right? So for example, I don't know if you guys have watched the movie Erin Brockovich, right, which dealt with Julia Roberts' movie, which dealt with groundwater contamination, right? So which means that some people came up and they said that, hey, you know what, we got ill because of the groundwater contamination because of company XYZ, and then a group of people came up together and then a class action was filed, right? So that's how it happens in the US. Now there is a very long, lengthy process that goes behind it, and it is called e-discovery. So which means that all documents, etc., are collected together and they are actually reviewed. They are actually reviewed to find things which are pertinent to the class action and not pertinent. Today, at least a few years ago, this was mostly done with human effort, right? And then you start building up certain algorithms and you write certain code, right, to do some objective or some subjective coding. But that part of the business is something that I see that the e-commerce data could be like 100 terabytes, like 500 terabytes. So we are looking at huge data sets, right? And it takes months altogether. Now with legal, with class actions and lawsuits, etc., we must also understand that there is no falling or passing the deadline. It's a code-driven date, right? So I would see technology playing a huge role in actually sifting through the data and helping us find matters which are pertinent to the whole litigation. So which means that the time frame for legal class actions or legal cases is going to shrink, right? Which means that courts will have more time and, there'll be better dispensation of justice on that side, right? The second part, for example, contracts, etc. Large companies have thousands of contracts rolling out every month, right? And they need to be vetted against what they call a legal playbook, right? That's where AI comes in, right? And that's where we see a lot of improvements happening in the way that, contracts are created, how they are archived, how they are retrieved, right? To make that whole general counsel's office space very efficient, right? So I see a lot of digitization and automation happening with the advent of technology in the legal sector. Right. So these are my thoughts, Vijay, on e-commerce and digital media and legal. Happy to take any questions on these.
Yep. Thank you, Amar, for covering. You have covered almost technology, predictive analytics, and the emphasis on the data science and the legal part is very important. You have briefed about how that happens in reality and how to deal with that. So thank you for that insights, Amar. Let me move on to the next question. Given your experience in scaling operations across geographies, what challenges do you foresee in establishing a seamless global operational structure in the digital age? How can businesses overcome these challenges?
This is a good one, Vijay, right? And I think at the core of it, right, when we are working either locally or when we are working internationally across borders, right? When we are working with cross borders teams and clients, and today almost every business is headed that way, right? Because it's a global market for everyone. The main challenges. So let me look at the challenges first, right? The main challenges include cultural differences, right? Regulatory variations and time zone disparities, right? And at the same time, the concept or the acceptance of quality is different in different regions, how people perceive quality of the output or the outcome that we produce and we deliver, right? So I think these are the main challenges that that need to be taken care of. Cultural differences, need to be taken into a lot of account, right? For example, let's say that white is the color white, okay, is a preferred color for weddings in the West, okay? But the color white may have a different connotation in Eastern cultures.
Yes.
Right? So even if you are developing an app or a software, these are small certain considerations that need to be taken care of. Another example I could give you is possibly about when Siri came out, right, with Arabic translation, translation. This was so much better than what a regular translation service would have done, right? So they, when somebody would say thank you to Siri, they would actually say afwak. I'm not an Arabic expert, but I learned this in my Saudi trips, right? When they say afwak, it is actually a very localized translation of the whole thing. Right, so I think cultural nuances play a huge role. For example, the way that you interact with people, especially physical interaction, right? How long do you hold a handshake? It's very different in the West. It's very different in the East, right? So these are things I think we need to be very cognizant about. Now, how do we overcome these, right? So we require a lot of investment into robust training programs, right? Not the regular L&Ds, the L&D programs that we have seen across decades. I think learning and development, and especially employee acclimatization to cultural nuances needs to take a front seat now. I think a lot of focus is required there, right? Again, when you go global, I always say that you need to go deep local, right? So which means you have to engage local talent and local expertise. It's a key player, right? And then you start utilizing technology for real-time collaboration, right? Businesses can bridge these gaps effectively, right, by the use of technology. For example, I've been in operations working with a large diverse sets of people, right, for more than a couple of decades. Pre-COVID, I could never imagine running a delivery center, let's say in Colombo in Sri Lanka or in Manila, right, with people working from home, or even in India, right? But then COVID gave us a very quick time lesson where we learned how to leverage technology like, Zoho that we are on right now, or Zoom, etc., or Meet, right? And how do we, we learned how to utilize these technologies to basically bridge the gap, right? So technology is going to play a huge role. Again, coming back to the first part of your question, regulatory variations are very necessary. Businesses are growing global. We need to be cognizant about regulations that are pertinent in the different parts of the geographies that we operate in. For example, I can give you GDPR for the European countries, or maybe CCPA or CCNA in the US, right? So these are things that we need to be taken into very serious consideration. Does that answer your question, Vijay? Do you have any questions?
Yes, you covered the things. Yeah, you covered in a better way, right? When you go global, deep and local is important, right? So that's a new learning for me, and this will certainly avoid the cultural differences and regulatory variances across
Absolutely. And which are very interesting. I missed out, one very important factor out here, right?
Yes, please.
The acceptance of DEI, right, across the globe is very scattered, right? Diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think that needs to come up to some kind of a consensus level globally, right? Specifically, if you look at the Middle East and the eastern part of the world and the West, right? A DEI is going to be a huge thing if you are operating globally, which means that standard set of policies that will govern, people in organizations, especially when you're working across different geographies, right? So I just wanted to slip that in as well.
Yes, thank you for that insight. I see some of the corporates already working on DEI, giving trainings, and they have no spot for that, and they emphasize the cultural uh, across organization. Yeah, thank you for that insight as well.
You're welcome.
So let me move on to next question. Since we are always looking, and now we are looking into the AI, right? So my question is about that only. How has the integration of artificial intelligence and automation impacted the operational aspects of businesses? And what does the future hold in this domain, in your view?
Great. Great one, Vijay. So, if we look back at it, right, today everybody is talking about automation because automation is a great word to talk about, right? But, ever since human beings learned how to write code, we have been automating processes, right? Making things easier, right? AI naturally took it to the next level. AI was around for the last maybe 10 years. A lot of investments were being made in that space, but it really got famous with one aspect of AI hitting out, all of us on our faces, right? ChatGPT, etc., and the likes launching out last year, right? So coming back to your question, you basically want to talk about how AI integration and automation has impacted the operational aspects of businesses, right?
Yes.
So I think that AI and automation have revolutionized operations, right, in quite a few ways, right? increase in efficiency. Now, when we talk about increase in efficiency, I want to call out the difference between efficiency and productivity as well, right? So let's say that you're working for 8 hours, and let's say that you're manufacturing bricks and you have to deliver 100 bricks in 8 hours, right? So if you are doing your 100 bricks in 8 hours, you have actually your 100 bricks during the time that you have spent at work, you have basically met your productivity targets, right? But efficiency is different. So now in 8 hours, now the time comes into the factor. In 8 hours, if you manufacture 110 bricks, then you have been more efficient than expected. And if you have manufactured 90 bricks, you're basically less efficient than expected, right? Now, where does AI and automation come in, right? So I see a lot of operations being impacted by automation, right? And with AI, RPA, for example, got very famous over the last 5-6 years, right? Pre-COVID, people had started RPA adoption, etc., right? But I see a lot of increased efficiencies happening, right? Because small parts of processes will get automated. I think human reviews will stay, right? But it will also lead not just with increase in efficiency, we will also see a drastic reduction in errors, right? So which means better sustainable quality. I also see AI contributing a lot towards predictive analytics, right? So with the data that we have. So one thing that's never going to go down is the amount of data that we will be exposed to and the amount of data that we will be consuming going forward, right? Present day and into the future as well, right? And a lot of decisions, good decisions, always lie a backtrack of data, right? It has to ride on data and insights drawn from that data. And I think AI with advanced predictive analytics will play a huge role out there. I also think that in the future, we will be seeing a lot of AI as we see today actually getting smarter, right? When I say that, I'm actually talking about smarter AI algorithms, right? Because machine learning is going to go deeper, right? AI is going to get smarter. So we will be seeing much more comprehensiveness in automation across sectors, right? And what would the expected outcome be? Where do we see this heading in the next maybe 3 to 5 years? My thought is that I think these technologies will suggest strategic business decisions, right? Much like a Kodak moment. And when I say Kodak moment, I'm not talking about the photograph, right, which was associated with the Kodak moment. I'm talking about the acceptance of change, right? For example, Kodak not moving into digital cameras, etc., and sticking on with the camera rolls when the other companies came up, took it. I think that is where businesses need to be more agile and start adopting technology when it comes in, right? It will spring up more businesses. I see some businesses losing out in the race who are not able to adapt, who are incumbents today. They will probably they will sustain by swallowing or by acquiring smaller players who are more nimble, smarter, and more efficient with their technology adoption. Right. So I see that happening. But unless incumbents and the large mammoth organizations that we have today, unless they are as nimble and as moving forward, I think, business directions will change. Businesses that we see today may not even exist and new businesses will come up. Great example, and I'm sure, Manjunath can relate to this, right? Banks. Most banking software is built around microservices and Java, right? They are legacy. They are, a lot of effort. Upgradations are difficult, etc. Right? I see a lot of that. I see applications and development with AI infusion getting smarter. Now, again, with AI, is the other side of the story is the ethicality and the what you call, data protection, right? So how is AI? Will it be tamed? Will it be contained? Or will AI spring this data into leaks and, et cetera, et cetera? So I think I also see a lot of regulations coming out which will govern the use of AI and how AI is actually fed with data and how that data can be appropriated or misappropriated. So I think that was a very long thing. If I just summarize it in a few words, I would look at AI and automation bringing in further enhanced efficiency that would relate to better gross margins for organizations and certainly better EBITDAs, right? So which means that I'm not saying that AI will replace humans in a big way. It will not, right? But I see profitability going up. I see error reductions and going down, which means that the cost of quality also goes down. I see predictive analytics helping us make better, broader decisions, and specifically the whole data alignment with businesses. I see that improving. I see algorithms evolving, right? What we have today is just the tip of the iceberg. I think there is a lot more that's going to be happening in that space, right? So I see wider automation adoption, and I see AI actually helping drive strategy-driven insights. So I think that's what comes to mind for me, Vijay.
Thank you, Amar, for that. Rightly said that I certainly we need to accept that AI is enhancing our productivity, and it is going to take all the strategic decisions in future. But I have one more question, which is against to this, I would say. But the question is, as a leader, how do you ensure that technology adoption doesn't overshadow the human aspects of operations, especially when it comes to customer rate? Because to the customer, we have to deal with the human beings, right? How do you see that?
Right. This question is asked around so many times, with as companies are adopting deeper technology, AI, etc. Right? But there's a lot of angst amongst employees, amongst co-workers, etc. What will happen to our jobs, right? Will AI eat it up, right? And the point that I always try to make is that it is very important to remember that technology is a tool, and the end goal is customer satisfaction, AI or no AI, right? So whatever we do is actually going to end up with a customer, and our goal is to keep that customer satisfied, so that we are evolving as a business or as an organization, right? So by fostering a culture that values human interaction, I think trainings are very important to the staff, specifically on soft skills. See, the human element, I believe, will always stay. Let me take sales for an example, right? AI will probably help you make a better deck. Predictive analytics will probably get you to refine and get some really good insights from the data that you have, but you have a human being who's going to be delivering at the end of it, right? So AI is going to be playing a huge role out there, but at the end of the day, it is going to be led by human beings. Secondly, the acceptance of AI is going to be driven by two things. One is the profitability and the cost structures of company. How much can they absorb? Can they afford to absorb, right? Because AI today is a premium, right? It is not something that has been commoditized as yet. I see commoditization happening in the future, but immediately at this point, it is not the case. So coming back, the human acceptance factor is very important, right? So for example, I was on an e-commerce site the other day. I was trying to make a return of a product, okay? And I went through the help section for return. It was a chatbot, right? It was a terrible experience for me, because at the end of the day, I did not get the answers I wanted. And then the chatbot led me to another portion, which finally got me to the human side of customer support. But again, I had wasted about 1.5 hours, right? So the customer satisfaction, as a customer, I really wasn't satisfied with that, right? It would have been an easier conversation with a human being coming in. But for acceptance, I think training and fostering a culture that values human interaction is very important. The human element, I do not see getting replaced in a very, very, very long time, because at the end of the day, it is going to be, we talk about B2C, we talk about B2B, etc., B2B2B, B2B2C, all of that. But at the end of the day, it is just H to H. It is human to human. And technology and AI is nothing but a tool in that area, right? So I think technology with smart leadership should be used to augment rather than replace human roles. And as leaders, we need to find out where we need to strike that balance. Right. So, Vijay, those are top of the mind for me on that question.
Yeah, thank you, Amar, for that insights. So, indeed, I agree that human acceptance is very important, and HTSH, with the technology with smart leadership, that is going to be, a tool to satisfy our customer. That's what I understood. Because I have some experience, like when we operate a fintech applications to pay the vendor when we shop. So if there is anything goes wrong, we just deal with the chatbot and it gives something, and we don't get any answer what we expected.
Right.
So yeah, so I think
so there
industry
are
has to.
two sides of the spectrum, right?
Yeah.
Technology as a tool helps build the interaction interface. But at the end of the day, customer satisfaction, customer is always going to be king, right? And the human element cannot be negated or left out.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for that insights, Amar. Let me move on to next question. How can a global mindset and cultural intelligence be integrated into technology strategies to foster successful international collaboration?
Yeah, good one, Vijay. I think this is, I find a lot of correlation between this question and, earlier when we talked about cultural nuances, etc., right?
Yes.
Earlier in the session.
Yeah.
Right. I think we must focus on developing technology platforms that are designed with cultural nuances in mind, right? I gave the example of Apple and Siri, right? We talk about the usage of colors, etc. Right? Cultural nuances could also be local cultural preferences, right? How people would like to engage with your application. Right. For example, dating apps give a lot of Tinder, for example, I read about it somewhere that it gives a lot of options for people to actually customize the interface. Just as we have left to right when we write, right, or RTL, right to left, etc. So these factors need to be taken into consideration. Right. So I think when we are designing applications in today's world and in the future, I think cultural nuances need to be taken care of. We need to continue to focus on promoting cross-cultural training, right? And I believe that organizations really need to step up the learning and development game, right? And you should not be learning something just to make sure that, hey, what, I have a check mark out here and I have completed this particular course, because if I don't, it somewhere hits my appraisal system. No, it's not that. I think training needs to be more effective in organizations. It needs to be driven with the global nature of businesses that we are seeing today, right? So I think cross-cultural training is going to be very important. Earlier on, I had said that when you go global, you need to go very deep locally, right? So localization is very important, and more so, utilizing local talent, right? So building diverse teams, right? So I think if you put these together, businesses can ensure that their technology strategies are globally inclusive and effective, right? I think cultural nuances, cultural trainings, etc., are very important today because we are working across the globe. Are you there? Did I lose you?
Yeah, you are audible now. Yeah. Thank you, Amar, for that insights. So this would be our final question, and then we will move on to the audience for their questions. So the question is, you mentioned about digital transformations, right? So finally, as businesses continue to evolve and expand in the digital realm, what key advice would you offer to aspiring leaders to ensure they are ready for the future global operations and technology?
Yeah, I think the writing is pretty much on the wall, right? So I would say that be curious, never stop learning. We need to understand that we have to embrace change as the only constant. Change is inevitable. I think change is happening uh, more often than we would have anticipated even 5 years in the past, right? So we need to be, it needs a lot of mindset acclimatization. I think there is a huge move, towards empathy. And I think there needs to be a further move between empathy and beyond empathy, right? Into compassion, right? So empathy is basically I feel this along with you, and I feel what is going on in your mind. Compassion is I feel it and I'm walking it along with you, right? I think there needs to be the mindset needs to evolve, and for that I think cultural nuances and cross cultural awareness is very important. So I think it is very important for us to stay curious and never stop learning, right? We I would say that upcoming leaders need to work towards their understanding of innovation. I think transparency and openness is going to be a huge thing. It is today, and it is where this is all heading into, right? So lifelong learning, curiosity, embracing change, fostering innovation, some openness, right, and prioritizing customer needs, right. That is never going to change. I would also advise people to take a step back and actually be very familiar with certain frameworks. You don't need to invent the wheel every time, right? So certain frameworks like the first principles or critical thinking, right, etc. These are frameworks that need to be studied. They need to be understood because they give clarity, right? So there, you cannot leave the past out. There are a lot of good things from the past that we need to be very confident upon and take it into the future with us, right? And at the end of the day, in the day and age of technology, we must continue to focus valuing the human touch over tools. Right. So that's in short, that's the advice that I would share with anybody who's interested.
Thank you, Amar. So I understood that learning and development is very much important, and having cross-cultural awareness and embracing the changes. The mindset, empathy, and compassion very important, and again transparency and openness are going to be the learning for us. Thank you so much. We are open for audience questions. Hello, Manjunath sir. Thank you for joining us today. Do you have any questions to Amar?
Hi, Vijay.
Yeah.
Hi, Amer.
Hi, Manjunath.
Well, it was awesome to hear you, sir. I'll be honest. The spectrum of knowledge and experience that you've got, and the explanation in just 37 minutes of questions. I mean, that was awesome. I'm still soaking in all that you've given.
You're very kind, Manjunath. Really honored to hear this from somebody as experienced as you.
Absolutely. There were several questions that came up at as the questions were asked by Vijay. One thing I probably put a very open and perhaps a bit of a controversial question. Mm-hmm. It's more like an elephant in the room for me everywhere I go, but nobody talks about it. Is AI at this point in time overhyped?
I think
what's your take? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I think it is. See, like I said, Manjunath, people, the acceptance of AI and the awareness really grew, I think, after November of last year, right, when ChatGPT was launched out, right? Yeah. But the effort into AI and specifically machine language has been happening for about a decade now.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So, and what people are seeing today is just generative AI.
Yeah.
Right? Content. But there is so much more to AI and machine learning, right? Let me give you an example. And, since, I spent about a good 6 years in core e-commerce, right? Where, when you are trying to create a catalog today, what happens is you have a graphic designer who is actually doing the image up, right? And then you're writing certain content attributes, etc. There's a human being, a content writer, who's writing all of this, right? Picking up maybe from the manufacturer side and adding certain things which will make it appealing to the end user. Now, these images can be generated, right? You have Delphi, etc. You have a lot of tools which will actually do this. But if we look back, even pre the generative part coming in, a lot of streamlining in supply chain, for example, has happened with the use of machine learning and AI, right, by global organizations. So I think AI is, to answer your question, yes, AI has hit the top right now. Everybody's talking about AI. There are at least 100 companies in India that are launching every day with some kind of AI as the backdrop. And more so, a lot of companies are using the word AI and ML without their products actually being run on AI and ML platforms.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to actually, I was hoping that I could hear, because I think that the term AI is one of the most abused now, because people use it any way they want it. Even a menu-driven kind of a bot, which says is now spoken as or said as it's AI-based. It's not AI based unless there's actually AI getting created out of it.
Exactly, and that AI needs to ride off a huge data set, and that interface between that is machine learning.
Yes,
right. So
absolutely. Yeah.
I think absolutely you hit the nail on the head, Manjunath. I think it is very overhyped. I think the awareness about AI needs to be, the education about AI needs to be out there. It is much more than generative AI.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, there were quite a few other things, Vijay, Amer, but I think I'll stop at this. Otherwise, I can go all night with the discussion. The other thing, the last perhaps question is, interestingly, you brought about the from a legal point of view, right? The legal creating or sifting through the documents in the court and, for class action and things like that. I know for certain people in the West are kind of open to these kind of, creation of data or creating some, I wouldn't say analytics, but extracting data from huge documents to kind of identify the key points that the solicitor, lawyer, or whoever needs at that point in time. But what I know for sure, in the US it is accepted. But in a more developing or a not so developed country in terms of usage of technology in the law, like India and perhaps some of the other southeastern countries, how far long before we kind of adopt that in our legal system? Amir, what's your thought about it?
See, when we talk about class actions and the production of evidence by both parties, okay, the plaintiff and the other side as well, production of evidence has been part of American law ever since, right? It is also a part of the British common law, right? And India, for example, uses that as well, right? The adoption of technology, I think, has been earlier and faster in the US. But there are companies like Xerox, there are other products out there which are actually leveraging these, and these are like commercially off-the-shelf subscription products, right? So you can, even if you are, for example, let me take a terrible example out here, Manjunath. Okay, let's look at a divorce proceeding, okay, where where let's say the husband or the wife is asking for a lot of maintenance, and the judge says that, okay, you know what, submit your bank statements and do it. Right. So how would people go about it today? They would typically, try to download it as a CSV file or run certain filters on it, right? Do it in Excel manually and then try to tag everything, right? But AI-driven platforms will be able to do this so much faster, right? Now, with these platforms, I named a few. I know that Thomson Reuters also has eDiscovery Point, right, which is very powerful. It's based on Azure, I think, right? So with the availability of these platforms, I think the acceptance will go up. But to answer your question, today, outside the West, the acceptance is fairly low because in India, there are just about that many class actions. In India, they call it party, right? In the US, they call it class action. In India, they call it party. There are just that many, party-based lawsuits that are happening, right? But I think that'll go up. The acceptance will go up.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Amer, for
You're welcome.
Appreciate that. Yeah. That's it from me, Vijay. Appreciate that. Yeah.
Thank you, Manjunath sir, for good questions to Amer. That is adding more value to our audience and for me as well. Thank you. With this, I would like to conclude the session. Thank you, Amer, for joining us today and sharing your insights and wisdom to the audience. And I learned a lot from you. Thank you for that. And thank you, Manjunath sir, for joining us today. With that, I'd like to conclude the session. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me here. And Manjuna, thank you for the questions. It's always a pleasure to engage with you.
Yeah, thanks, Amer. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.